Sometimes in life, you get pushed so far into a corner that the only way out is to do something you never thought you were capable of. Can you imagine your late husband's parents, just weeks after he dies, showing up with lawyers, demanding full custody of your child, calling you an incubator, and telling you you'll never see her again? Because that's exactly what happened to me. And that's why I gave them a fake DNA test. My husband, Joshua, was the love of my life. He died in a horrific car accident when our daughter, Lily, was just 4 years old. The devastation was absolute. It was like the world just stopped spinning. Those first few weeks, I was a ghost. Barely breathing, barely functioning. Joshua's parents, Harold and June, showed up for the funeral. They seemed supportive, but something felt off. They kept calling Lily their baby, murmuring that she was all they had left of Joshua. They took hundreds of photos of just Lily, meticulously excluding me. June even tried to take Lily to the bathroom alone, and Harold measured her height against the doorframe, almost like they were documenting something. It was chillingly strange. Then, 2 weeks after the funeral, the mask dropped. They stormed into my house with a lawyer named Francis. He slammed custody paperwork down on my coffee table. Custody paperwork. They were seeking full custody of Lily, claiming I was an unfit mother consumed by grief. Unfit. Me. The proof. Photos of me crying in the grocery store while Lily, bless her heart, was innocently playing on my phone. Pictures of our messy house taken during the reception after Joshua's funeral. A sickening statement from June, alleging I'd left Lily alone with them for 3 hours the day after Joshua died, when I was actually at the funeral home making arrangements for their son. They had been building a case meticulously from the very moment Joshua died. Harold, his face hard, actually said Lily belonged with blood family and that I was just the incubator. June, her voice dripping with venom, implied that Joshua would want Lily raised by people who truly loved him, as if I hadn't adored my husband. Francis, the lawyer, then leaned forward. Coldly, he said if I cooperated, if I just signed over my daughter, they'd let me visit Lily once a month, supervised. If I fought them, he promised, they'd make sure I never saw her again. They honestly believed I'd just hand over my child because they demanded it. My daughter. My Lily. The sheer audacity of it, the icy calculation, it ignited something in me I didn't know I had. I told them to get out. June, standing there, smug, said they'd already filed with the court and I'd be hearing from Child Services. And she was right. 2 days later, CPS was at my door. Harold and June had called, claiming I was drunk, that Lily was in danger. The social worker, thank goodness, found me stone-cold sober, playing puzzles with Lily in our perfectly clean living room. But the calls kept coming. Every few days, a new, disgusting complaint. I was on drugs. Lily had bruises. Strange men were coming and going. Each investigation found absolutely nothing, but it was exhausting. It was humiliating. And through it all, Harold and June would show up during these visits, feigning concern, offering to take Lily for her safety. It was a psychological war. The custody hearing was set for 6 weeks out. They hired 3 lawyers and a private investigator who became my shadow. They showed up at Lily's preschool, telling staff they were the emergency contacts now. They told our pediatrician I was unstable and shouldn't make medical decisions. They even told our neighbors Lily was moving in with them soon. I later found out they were redecorating Joshua's old room in their house, turning it into Lily's princess room, showing people photos like it was a done deal. That's when it snapped. That's when I decided to play dirty. I started dropping little hints. Nothing direct, mind you, just vague comments about being grateful Harold and June still wanted a relationship despite everything. When June, predictably, asked what I meant, I just changed the subject, looked guilty, like I was hiding some terrible secret. I got my friend Rose to call Harold, pretending to be from a DNA testing company, confirming his appointment. Harold had never made an appointment, but it planted the seed. He became obsessed. I left a pamphlet about paternity testing on my kitchen counter when they came to visit, making sure they saw me quickly hide it, but not fast enough. June pounced. She demanded to know what I was hiding. I started crying, choked out some story about Joshua and I having problems before Lily was born, that I'd never been sure, and he'd said it didn't matter because he loved her anyway. It was a complete, utter lie. Joshua was absolutely Lily's father. We were happy. But Harold and June didn't know that. They demanded a DNA test immediately. I acted reluctant, but agreed, if they dropped the custody case. They were so confident Lily was Joshua's, so convinced of their victory, that they agreed without hesitation. I scheduled the test at a clinic my friend's husband owned. He was more than happy to help after hearing what they'd put me through. The day of the test, Harold and June brought their entire family to witness their triumph. We all gave samples, and we waited for the rushed results. My friend's husband delivered the news personally. Lily was definitely not related to Harold and June. The test was fake, but the paperwork? It looked absolutely perfect. Harold's face went from angry red to livid purple in literally 2 seconds flat. He screamed that I was a lying gold digger who trapped his son. June let out a sound like a wounded animal and lunged at me across the clinic waiting room. My friend's husband and his nurses had to step between us, grabbing her arms before she could reach me. Their whole family stood frozen, like someone had hit pause on a movie. Harold just kept yelling that I destroyed their family, stolen their grandchild through lies. Security had to physically escort them out, screaming threats the whole way. June was crying, shouting she'd prove I faked it. Harold vowed I'd pay. Their daughter just covered her face, and their son stared at me, bewildered. My friend's husband put a reassuring hand on my shoulder and told me to take Lily and go home. I grabbed her little hand, and we walked out the side door as Harold and June were still being dragged out the front. My hands shook so violently on the steering wheel, I could barely hold it steady. Lily, oblivious, sat in her car seat, playing with her stuffed rabbit like nothing in the world had changed. The weight of what I'd just done hit me all at once. I had to pull over. I couldn't see through the tears. Lily, her sweet voice, asked why Grandma and Grandpa were yelling so loud. I wiped my eyes and told her they were just very upset right now about some grown-up stuff. She accepted it so easily and went back to making her rabbit hop. I called Montgomery, my lawyer, through the car speakers. He answered on the second ring, his calm, steady voice a lifeline. I told him everything. He said he'd review the paperwork Harold and June signed, ensure the custody case was officially closed. He called me back an hour later. Harold and June had explicitly agreed to drop all custody claims if the DNA proved no biological relation. Their signatures were right there, witnessed by their own lawyer. The case was over.
Done.
Montgomery warned me they might try other harassment tactics, given their instability, but legally, they had no claim. He suggested documenting everything, preparing for a restraining order. That night, I held Lily as she slept in her little bed. She looked so peaceful, so safe. Joshua was, without a doubt, her father. I knew that. But I had just erased his parents from her life with a lie. There was no taking it back. But the alternative was losing her to people who called me an incubator, who saw her as property. They would have taken her, let me see her once a month like I was some dangerous stranger. I wiped my eyes, kissed her forehead, and told myself I did what I had to do, even though the guilt sat heavy in my chest. The next morning, my phone started ringing at 6 a.m.
June.
Over and over. I let it go to voicemail. She called again. 47 times. I finally blocked her number. The voicemails ranged from desperate begging to see Lily, to threats of legal action, to screaming every horrible name she could think of. Harold started texting, too, calling me vile things, promising I'd pay, that I'd destroyed their family, stolen their only connection to their dead son. I saved everything, then blocked him too. My friend Coraline showed up around 10 a.m. I had held it together as long as I could, but I needed someone who wasn't a lawyer or a 4-year-old. I confessed everything about the fake DNA test. Coraline just held me while I broke down, feeling like the worst person in the world. She pulled back, looked me straight in the eyes, and said, "You did what you had to do to protect your daughter from people who were trying to steal her." She reminded me of their calculating cruelty, the false CPS reports, the 3 lawyers they hired to take my child away. She said they left me with no good choices, so I made the only one that kept Lily safe. 2 days later, Harold and June showed up at my house. I saw their car pull up and immediately started recording on my phone. They pounded on the door, demanding I admit the test was fake. I stayed inside, door locked, recording their screaming accusations. June was convinced I'd switched samples or paid Fletcher. Harold ranted about a conspiracy. After 10 minutes, I called the police. They showed up within 15 minutes, removed Harold and June for trespassing, and took my statement and the recording. Montgomery filed for a restraining order the very next day. He used all the evidence: the harassment, the false CPS reports, the threatening voicemails and texts, the trespassing. The court granted a temporary order. 500 feet away from me, Lily, our home, her preschool. No contact, direct or indirect. The permanent hearing was set for 3 weeks out. I started seeing Valerie, a grief and trauma therapist. I told her everything: Joshua's death, the attempted kidnapping by his parents, the fake DNA test. Valerie listened without judgment. She helped me understand that I'd been backed into an impossible corner by predators who exploited my vulnerability. She said the deception was survival, not malice, even though the moral weight still felt heavy. We talked about grief, protection, and what it means to be a good mother when there are no good choices. She gave me tools to manage the panic attacks and guilt that kept hitting me in waves. June, still desperate, contacted Fletcher's clinic, demanding to see the actual DNA results. But Fletcher had prepared everything perfectly: fake paperwork, lab letterhead, technical details, reference numbers, all legitimate looking. June threatened to sue for fraud, but her own lawyer told her there was no legal basis. The test results appeared valid. Fletcher called me, reassuring me that we were safe. 3 days after the DNA test blew up, Joshua's brother, Bo, called. I hadn't heard from him since the funeral. His voice was broken, shaky. He'd just found out about everything: the custody papers, the lawyers, the false CPS reports. He'd been overseas, and the DNA results had just blown up his family. He asked if he could still see Lily, still be her uncle, despite his parents' actions. I told him I needed time. I felt weird and suspicious, but also a little hopeful. I met Bo at a coffee shop. He looked terrible. He admitted his parents had become obsessed with Lily after Joshua died, calling her their second chance. He genuinely looked sick talking about the false CPS reports. He'd confronted them after the DNA test, but they wouldn't listen. He leaned forward, lowered his voice, and told me what his parents were saying now: I'd switched samples, paid Fletcher. A crazy conspiracy to keep them from their granddaughter. He said they sounded completely unhinged, repeating the same accusations like a broken record. Part of me was scared, but another part felt relieved. The more insane they sounded, the less likely anyone would believe them. 2 days later, the preschool director called. June had shown up, trying to pick up Lily, even though I'd removed her from the emergency contact list weeks ago. She caused such a scene, screaming about her rights, that they had to call the police. The cops banned her completely. I felt sick to my stomach. They weren't backing off. They were getting more desperate, more unpredictable. Tiana from CPS came for her final visit. She looked through the house, played with Lily, then sat down with me. She apologized for everything, said her report would note the complaints were malicious and unfounded. She'd seen this before: grandparents weaponizing the system. She officially closed the case. I almost cried with relief. That particular nightmare was over. A certified letter arrived from a lawyer I'd never heard of. Harold was demanding another DNA test at a lab of their choosing, claiming the first was fraudulent. Montgomery, my lawyer, responded the same day. The matter was closed, per their signed agreement. Any further harassment would result in additional legal action, including stalking charges. He said their threats were getting desperate, scattered, meaning they were running out of options and lawyers. June posted something on social media. A long rant about being kept from her granddaughter, hinting I was abusing Lily. People who knew the truth commented, mentioning the custody attempt, the false CPS reports, the restraining order. She deleted it within hours. Her attempt to make me look bad just made her look more unhinged. The permanent restraining order hearing finally arrived. I brought a thick folder of evidence. Harold and June showed up with another lawyer, arguing they were just grieving grandparents. The judge, his mouth a thin line, read through the custody paperwork and the false CPS reports. He asked Harold and June if they understood the seriousness of filing false reports. He cut off their lawyer and granted the permanent restraining order for 3 years. 500 feet. No contact. Violate it once, criminal charges. Bo called after the hearing, asking if he could maintain a relationship with Lily, separate from his parents. I was hesitant, but he had been consistently respectful, genuinely horrified by their actions. We agreed he could visit at my house supervised. He was relieved, grateful, and promised he'd never manipulate the situation or pass information. I wanted to believe him. Lily deserved at least one person from Joshua's family who wasn't completely broken. The first panic attack hit me in the grocery store parking lot. A silver sedan just like Harold and June's. My chest locked up, hands shaking. Lily asked what was wrong, but I couldn't answer, gasping for air. It wasn't their car, but my body reacted like they were right there, ready to snatch Lily away. I called Valerie. She fit me in immediately. She explained my nervous system was stuck in fight or flight. The hypervigilance would fade with time, she promised, but I needed patience. For weeks, I saw those cars everywhere. My heart raced, palms sweated, until I could confirm it wasn't them. One evening, Lily asked when she'd see Grandma and Grandpa again. I told her they were taking a very long break because of grown-up problems. Nothing she did wrong. She nodded, accepted it, and went back to her art project. Part of me was relieved she wasn't traumatized, but another part worried. Was she internalizing feelings? Would this abandonment show up later? I just watched her, made sure she knew I was always available to talk. Coraline came over with security cameras. She spent hours installing them around the house, connecting them to my Wi-Fi. Front door, back door, driveway, no blind spots. Just having them made me feel more secure. She set up motion alerts. She helped me change all the locks, install a deadbolt on Lily's bedroom door. Excessive, but necessary. The flowers arrived on a Tuesday, massive arrangement of pink roses and white lilies. The card, handwritten by June, begged to see Lily, promising to respect boundaries. Reading it made my stomach churn. It sounded so reasonable, so sad, like they were the victims. I took photos, the card, the delivery receipt, then called Montgomery. This was a violation. He sent everything to the court. June received an official warning. Any future violations could mean criminal charges, jail time. The flowers sat on my counter for an hour, then I threw them in the trash. I didn't want that manipulation in my house. 3 months after the fake DNA test, I woke up and realized I could breathe normally again. The constant fear, the hypervigilance, it was fading. I still checked the cameras, still jumped at silver sedans, but the intensity was less. Lily was thriving, making friends, learning songs. Her teacher said she was well-adjusted, no signs of trauma. My guilt over the DNA test lessened. Maybe I hadn't just protected her from losing me, but from people who would have hurt her in ways I couldn't predict. Life was starting to feel almost normal. Bo started visiting every other weekend, bringing age-appropriate gifts. He'd sit on the floor, building block towers with Lily, genuinely enjoying her company. He never mentioned Harold and June. He never asked probing questions. He just respected the boundaries. Watching them together, I felt a cautious gratitude. Lily could maintain some connection to Joshua's family through someone healthy. Bo looked so much like Joshua, sometimes it hurt to watch, but it also felt good to see that resemblance in someone who wasn't trying to hurt us. Valerie helped me work through the complicated grief. I couldn't properly mourn Joshua because I'd been in survival mode. The grief and the battle were tangled. Now, the grief hit in waves, mixed with anger at Harold and June for corrupting even my memories. Our wedding photos, Joshua holding baby Lily, their parents' actions had poisoned it all. Valerie helped me create separate spaces in my mind for grieving Joshua versus processing what his parents had done. She reminded me Joshua would have been horrified, would have protected Lily, just like I did. That helped. I found old photos of Joshua growing up with his parents. Looking at them with new eyes, I saw the control. June's hand always gripping Joshua's shoulder, tight. Harold positioning him like a trophy. Joshua's smile looked forced. He'd always said his parents were intense, but I never understood the depth of their dysfunction until they targeted Lily. They'd tried to own Joshua his whole life. When he died, they transferred that ownership onto his daughter. Those photos made me realize I'd saved Lily from repeating Joshua's childhood, from being displayed as their property instead of loved as her own person. The pediatrician's office called. Harold had tried to request Lily's medical records, claiming grandparent rights. The office manager denied it, documented his aggressive tone, and flagged his name. Montgomery added it to the restraining order violation file. He sent their lawyer a warning. Any further attempts to access information would be harassment. For months after the fake DNA test, Lily only mentioned Grandma and Grandpa occasionally, without distress. She'd see an older couple and comment they looked like grandparents. But it was casual observation. She'd formed closer bonds with Coraline, and Beau's visits gave her a stable connection to Joshua's side. My own parents had stepped up. The family structure around her was completely different, healthier, based on love, not possession. Watching her thrive eased some of my guilt. The mail came, an official envelope from a law firm 2 states away. Harold and June were moving, 800 miles away, to a retirement community. Beau confirmed it that evening. They'd packed in secret. June was telling friends they couldn't bear to live in the same town. Harold was telling neighbors they needed a fresh start. Beau said it was all designed to make them look like grieving victims. But 800 miles of distance between them and Lily felt like a gift. The legal barriers were strong, but geography added another layer of protection. I felt something loosen in my chest that had been tight for months. 3 weeks later, Montgomery called. June's new lawyer had sent a letter. I drove to his office. The letter, typed on expensive paper, offered to drop all hostility, cease all legal action, if I would admit the DNA test was fabricated and allow supervised monthly visits. The lawyer's language was careful, but the desperation was obvious. June wanted validation. She wanted proof that she was right, that Lily was their biological grandchild, that I had lied. She was willing to trade peace for the truth she needed to hear. Montgomery watched my face. He'd already drafted a response. I had nothing to admit. The DNA test results stood as documented. The restraining order would remain in full effect. He said June's offer was a trap. Any admission could be used to reopen legal proceedings or file criminal charges for fraud. My confession would give them ammunition they lacked. I signed off. Part of me felt sorry for June. She was clearly broken. But I couldn't risk Lily's safety for June's peace of mind. Their grief didn't erase the calculated cruelty of their custody attempt. Montgomery mailed the response. I sat in Valerie's office the following Thursday, explaining the guilt that kept resurfacing. She asked what other options Harold and June had given me. I recounted everything. The ambush, the false CPS reports, the 3 lawyers, the threats. She asked what ethical choice existed in that situation. Lose my daughter to people who saw her as property? Or use deception to protect her? Those were my only options. She said I'd chosen Lily's safety over my own moral comfort, exactly what a mother should do. The deception was morally complicated, but the motivation was pure protection. Harold and June had created a situation where normal ethical behavior meant losing my child. I cried for 20 minutes. When I finally stopped, Valerie reminded me that guilt was natural, but I needed to separate the weight of deception from the necessity of survival. I'd saved Lily from a toxic situation using the only weapon available. That didn't make me a bad person. It made me a mother who refused to be destroyed by people who'd mistaken grief for ownership. That night, after Lily was asleep, I pulled out a blank journal. I started writing. Documented everything. Joshua's death, their obsession with Lily, the custody papers, the false reports, the fake DNA test. All of it, including my doubts and guilt. This journal was for Lily, for when she was old enough to understand why her father's parents weren't in her life. She deserved the full story. I wanted her to judge my methods when she was old enough to understand the impossible situation. I wrote for 2 hours. It would be my insurance. Beau called again. His parents were still insisting I'd faked the DNA test to their new neighbors at the retirement community, showing photos of Lily, claiming she was their biological grandchild, held hostage by a vindictive woman. He said their old social circle had mostly stopped engaging, but in this new community, they found fresh audiences for their delusion. The more insane they sounded, the less likely they were to be believed. But it exhausted Bo. 5 months had passed since the fake DNA test. I finally felt ready to take Lily back to the cemetery. We bought yellow roses. I explained we were visiting Daddy's special place. His headstone was simple. Lily carefully placed the roses at the base. We talked about Joshua, about his funny voices, how he'd dance with her. Then she asked if Daddy knew that Grandma and Grandpa were mad at us. My throat tightened. I told her Daddy would want everyone to be kind, even when things were hard. She seemed satisfied. I promised Joshua, silently, that I'd protected our daughter the only way I could. I woke up one morning and realized I'd slept through the entire night without waking in a panic. It had been happening gradually, but this was the first time I consciously noticed. My body was finally learning it was safe again. Valerie said my nervous system was recalibrating. The restraining order, the distance, the lack of new threats allowed my brain to release the hypervigilance. The constant panic was fading into something manageable. I could function again, without the crushing weight of fear. Montgomery called. The restraining order violation file was empty. Harold and June hadn't attempted contact. Their move, combined with legal barriers, seemed to be working. Either they'd accepted defeat, or they were biding their time. He advised vigilance. The restraining order had 2.5 years remaining. He recommended planning renewal procedures well in advance. Lily started asking more questions about Joshua. I answered with specific, happy memories. Bo helped, sharing stories from their childhood. Lily absorbed these stories, incorporating them into her understanding of her daddy. The memories were becoming real to her in a healthy way, without the toxic possession. I walked into a widowed parents support group Valerie recommended. 8 people sat in a circle, looking as nervous and exhausted as I felt. Their stories of grief, mixed with single parenting, felt painfully familiar. Several mentioned difficult in-laws, though none had faced custody attempts. Hearing their experiences helped normalize what I'd been through. I left feeling less alone than I had in months. Coraline showed up with coffee and empty boxes. She didn't ask, just started pulling Joshua's clothes from the closet. Most went into donation, but some, his favorite flannel, the concert t-shirt from our first date, the hoodie he was wearing the morning he died, went into a smaller box for Lily. We sorted through his desk. Coraline found a stack of letters Joshua had written to Lily before she was born. I opened one. His hopes, his promises, his excitement. The tears came, hard and fast, but they felt clean somehow. Actual grief, not panicked survival. We filled 3 memory boxes for Lily. The bedroom felt lighter. The preschool director caught me during pickup. Lily had been talking about her daddy almost every session, describing him from photos from my stories. She told a class her daddy liked blue, was good at building towers, made funny faces. Lily's descriptions were detailed, accurate. She was building a real relationship with Joshua's memory, not just abstract loss. She seemed emotionally healthy, well-adjusted. No confusion or distress. That lifted a weight I hadn't realized I was carrying. The official notification arrived. Harold and June had completed their move to Arizona, 800 miles away. I stood in my driveway, holding the envelope, and something released in my chest. Geographic distance added another layer of protection. They couldn't just show up. Bo confirmed they were telling everyone in their new community that their son's widow wouldn't let them see their granddaughter. They painted themselves as victims. Bo said they'd created an entire narrative where they were the wrong parties, and I was the villain. But, he added, they were someone else's problem now. 6 months after Joshua's death, I woke up and realized I was functioning again. Not just surviving, but actually living. Back at work. Lily thriving. We had routines now. Normal, boring routines. The grief was still there, but it wasn't paralyzing. The terror of losing her had faded to manageable caution. We were safe. Protected. Building a life that honored Joshua without being destroyed by his parents. Valerie asked how I planned to handle the DNA test with Lily long-term. Would she see it as justified protection or manipulative deception? I didn't have good answers. Part of me believed she'd understand, but another part worried she'd see it as proof I was willing to lie about fundamental things. Valerie said the truth was probably in the middle. Lily might understand my motivation, while still feeling uncomfortable with the method. I told Valerie I was committed to being honest when she was old enough. I'd accept her judgment. Beau brought his girlfriend, Sarah, to meet Lily. She was a teacher, warm and natural with Lily. She didn't try to be a mother figure, just treated Lily like a person she genuinely enjoyed. Sarah understood the situation with Harold and June, supported Beau's decision to maintain boundaries. Watching them leave, Beau's hand on Sarah's back, waving to Lily, felt like seeing Joshua's family expand in good directions. The toxic elements were distant, but the healthy parts were growing stronger. Montgomery and I updated my will and custody arrangements. Coraline was named primary guardian. Documentation of the custody battle and restraining order attached. References to the DNA test, carefully worded. If I died, Coraline would have immediate legal custody, with full authority to maintain the restraining order. Harold and June were explicitly prohibited from guardianship. Another layer of legal protection locked into place. The guilt hit hardest late at night. I'd lie in bed, replaying the fake DNA test, Harold's purple face, June's shock. I'd remember Joshua's face in our wedding photos. Wonder what he'd think about me lying about his daughter's paternity. The weight of it pressed down until I couldn't breathe. Then, I'd force myself to remember. Harold calling me an incubator. June's systematic false CPS reports. Their complete disregard for Lily's bond with me. The way they showed up with lawyers 2 weeks after Joshua died. They gave me a choice. Ethics or my daughter's safety. The only weapon I had was deception. I'd make the same choice again, every single time. The guilt was real, but so was the knowledge that Lily was safe and thriving because I'd been willing to do whatever it took. We started new holiday traditions. Baked Joshua's favorite cookies. Watched his superhero movies. Made ornaments with his photo. She was building a relationship with her father through memory and love, not through the possessive ownership Harold and June had tried to claim. The traditions felt good. I ran into Mrs. Anderson, a neighbor Harold and June tried to turn against me.
She apologized.
She said she felt terrible for believing their claims. Other neighbors had compared notes, realized they'd been running a manipulation campaign. The community was healing. We weren't isolated and under siege anymore. Beau called. His parents were still asking about Lily, demanding information. He kept his answers short, firm. He'd made it clear his relationship with me and Lily existed separately from their mess. They accused him of betrayal, but he held his ground. Their delusion had become their entire identity, he said. 7 months had passed since the fake DNA test. I could look at our wedding photos without falling apart. Joshua and I, laughing, dancing, kissing. The genuine love we'd shared, the family we'd created, untainted by what his parents became. The grief still hit, but it didn't knock me down. Lily climbed up, pointed at a photo, said Mama, and Daddy looked happy. I hugged her close. Yes, we were very happy, and Daddy loved us both so much. The restraining order still had 2.5 years remaining, but I'd already started planning to renew it. Their current silence and distance might mean defeat, or they might be biding their time. I refused to risk Lily's safety on assumptions. The legal protection would stay firmly in place until Lily was old enough to make her own choices. I started dating again. The idea felt disloyal to Joshua, yet necessary. Valerie reminded me living fully was the best way to honor him. My first few dates were awkward. I was honest about being a widowed, single mother with complicated in-law history. Some guys ran. Others stuck around but couldn't handle the reality. Still, the process felt hopeful. Lily asked if Uncle Beau could come to her 5th birthday party. I agreed immediately. He'd earned my trust. The party was loud and chaotic, in the best way. Beau showed up with thoughtful gifts, including a framed photo of Joshua holding baby Lily. He played with the kids, helped with games. The party felt joyful and ordinary. Everything the first year after Joshua's death wasn't. A message from June, 2 weeks after Lily's party. Delivered through a mutual acquaintance. June begged for just one photo of Lily. She wasn't asking to see her or talk to me. Just one current picture. The intermediary said June seemed genuinely broken. Was she suffering, or was this another manipulation tactic? Did her pain matter against the trauma she'd inflicted? Would one photo encourage more boundary pushing? I had no answers, just the uncomfortable weight of someone else's grief pressing against my protective walls. Valerie helped me process it. Their initial response to Joshua's death wasn't grief, but ownership. Their methods weren't love, but control. Their current desperation didn't erase the trauma. Compassion for their pain didn't require sacrificing Lily's protection. Valerie said the kindest thing I could do was maintain clear boundaries. The guilt about June's suffering was real, but so was my responsibility to protect my daughter. 8 months after the custody battle officially ended, I planned Lily's kindergarten transition. The school had excellent ratings. I provided full documentation of the restraining order. Their names, photos on the banned list. Only I could pick up Lily. Security measures felt automatic now, part of our life. I met James through work. We bonded over whispered jokes, started texting, then had coffee, then actual dates. He was patient with my complicated situation, genuinely interested in me, and eventually Lily. We took things slowly. His steady presence felt like possibility. He asked thoughtful questions about Joshua, never seemed threatened. When I explained the in-law situation, vaguely, he listened without judgment. He made me laugh. Bo called, excited. He was engaged to Sarah. He asked if Lily could be flower girl. My protective instinct flared. The wedding was out of state, where Harold and June lived. But Bo quickly explained his parents would not be invited. Security guards, photos, banned from the property. Sarah fully supported it. Bo said he'd earned my trust.
He was right.
I agreed, with conditions about security. He thanked me with tears in his eyes. 9 months after the fake DNA test, most days, I could look at myself in the mirror without feeling like a liar. The deception sat in my chest like a stone, but Lily was safe, and that mattered more than my conscience. Harold and June had forced my hand. I'd protected her the only way they left available. Watching her thrive made the moral weight bearable, even if it never fully disappeared. Some nights, I still woke up thinking about what I'd done. But then I'd check on Lily, sleeping peacefully, and remember why I'd crossed that line. She was mine to protect. I'd make the same choice again. Lily started kindergarten. No tears, no clinging. Just a wave goodbye, and off to join her friends. Her teacher called for a conference. My stomach dropped, but the teacher smiled. Lily was doing wonderfully, talking about her daddy, matter-of-factly, healthy and age-appropriate. That lifted a weight I hadn't realized I'd been carrying. James came for dinner. Lily knew him. This was their first official meeting. He arrived with flowers for me, a coloring book for Lily. They sat at the kitchen table, working on art projects. He showed her how to blend colors, made up silly songs. He never tried to act like her father or replace Joshua. He just treated her with genuine affection and respect. Watching them laugh together, something in my chest unclenched. Maybe there was space for more than just survival. Montgomery called. Harold had sent a formal letter, requesting mediation to discuss healing the family rift. Montgomery read it to me, his voice skeptical. Likely a manipulation attempt. He advised declining. The restraining order was my only communication. His response, declining mediation. Court orders remained in effect. Harold's lawyer sent an angry letter, calling me vindictive. Montgomery filed it. Beau's wedding. Lily, a flower girl, serious concentration on her face. Harold and June weren't there. Security guards had their photos. Sarah welcomed Lily warmly. The wedding was beautiful, normal, joyful. Watching Beau get married felt like reclaiming Joshua's family legacy from the toxic elements. Lily danced, ate too much cake, fell asleep in the car. Nearly a year after Joshua died, Lily and I visited his grave. She'd picked wildflowers. She told Daddy about kindergarten, about Uncle Beau's wedding, about James, who taught her to draw elephants. I knelt, told Joshua I'd protected our daughter the only way I could. I hoped he understood the choices I'd made. Lily was safe, loved, thriving. Then she asked if we could go get ice cream. Life continued forward. James took me to dinner. 6 months of dating. He reached across the table, took my hand. He was falling in love with both me and Lily. He was ready for whatever pace we needed. The relationship felt like healing, not replacement. Lily called him James, not Daddy. He never pushed for a father role or tried to compete with Joshua's memory. He just showed up, consistently, with kindness and patience. I was genuinely happy now. Lily was thriving. We had a family structure built on love. Legal barriers and geographic distance kept us protected from Harold and June, who lived 800 miles away, convinced of delusions they'd never let go. The fake DNA test remained my secret burden and protection, a stone I'd learned to carry. Morally complicated, ethically messy, but absolutely effective. We were safe. We were healing. We were building a future that honored Joshua's memory without being destroyed by his parents' dysfunction. Some mornings I woke up and felt actual joy instead of just relief at surviving another day. Lily would climb into my bed, tell me about her dreams. I'd make pancakes while she colored. Normal life had returned. The grief remained, but it didn't consume everything anymore. There was room for happiness alongside the loss. And that felt like its own kind of victory. So, tell me, if you were in my shoes, faced with losing your child to people who saw her as property, would you have done what I did? Have you ever had to choose between morality and survival? I'd really love to hear your thoughts.